Welcome, welcome, welcome to another episode of Unscripted. We're talking about Proverbs 19 today, and it is powerful. I've never looked at it like this. I woke up this morning and I did my study. I was looking at it, and it really blew my mind because there's a lot of times what my wife has told me, and I want you to take this in and even write it down if you can, is people won't hear what you say. They won't see what you do. They'll only hear where they are at. And when you get to a certain point, words resonate different. So you could read a book when you're 15, then you could read that same book when you're 30, and it'll hit different. And that's the reason why, for me, Proverbs, the corresponding proverb, corresponding day, it doesn't become redundant. The reason why we're in Proverbs is because it's 3,000-year-old wisdom, and it's principle-based, and principles don't ever time out. So we're going through this, and I've been doing this for over 30 years, the corresponding proverb, the corresponding day. When I read it, that's the way it started, and then it started to read me. And when I read the corresponding proverb, which is Proverbs 1 on the first of the month, and I do that every single month, it reads different because of my circumstances. Today, we're going to be jumping in. This is incredible because most of the time people think about, I can either be successful financially or I can, work on my spirit, but I can't have both. But here's a blueprint. Proverbs 19 is a blueprint about wealth, and there's 3 stages to it: building it, keeping it, and growing it. And so we're going to be talking about wealth, association, power, discipline, wisdom, knowledge, patience, love. Proverbs 19, let's get it.
Cause we believing it's for certain. We put the work in. We ain't stopped just because it's hurting right before your eyes. So it's coming to no surprise. The takeover is televised over and over and over again. Make no mistake, we continue to win. Defeat never known, cause I will not lose. They wanna mimic my moves but can't walk in my shoes.
Welcome back to another episode of Unscripted. I'm your host, Kelly Cardenas, and none of this comes from judgment. It all comes from study and me being punched in the face, hearing these incredible principles and saying, like, why am I not utilizing them in my life? How can I utilize them better? And that principles in life never time out. When you look at circumstances, if you're constantly going on the roller coaster of circumstances, you're going to go high and low and high and low. And my mama taught me this very early in life. She said, son, don't ever chase after happiness. Choose joy. See, happiness, when the circumstance is good, then I'm happy. When the circumstance is bad, then I'm sad. But with joy, if the circumstance is bad, I can choose to react however I want. And that's where principles in my life have been massive. So let's hit it. So wealth, association, power, discipline, wisdom, knowledge, patience, and love. And let me give a precursor today. We are going to move rapid fire. So I suggest that you write some stuff down or even just go back to this. The next thing is subscribe, like, and push the little notification button. So that way, every single time we go live with the corresponding proverb, the corresponding day, or an incredible interview with an iconic person, that you get a notification for it, and my son Maddox would think I'm cool. So wealth, and I've never, again, looked at Proverbs like this, but wealth, it's in 3 stages. I learned this yesterday. I was with a woman named DC, or Doria Cordova, who has wealth and you, or money and you. And she was talking about these 3 concepts. I was like, wow, this is amazing. She said, you're either building wealth, you're trying to keep it, or you're growing it. And I was like, man, this is revolutionary. And then I read this morning, and it ain't revolutionary. It's 3,000 years old in Proverbs 19, and God gave it to us so long ago. But a lot of times we have the tendency not to dig into that. So let's dig into it today. First point, build on a rock that is not sand. Think of that statement, build on a rock that is not sand. No, sand or rock is made up of sand, but it's condensed. It's solid. It's got a firm foundation. So build your wealth on a firm foundation. What is that firm foundation? Watch this. In verse 1 of 19, better the poor whose walk is blameless than a fool whose lips are perverse. Do the right thing. Build your wealth serving people, giving people value at a higher level than what they're receiving. I just saw this with Greg Reed. We got a chance to do Prosperity Camp. We do a Secret Knock, and we have conversations like this all the time. We know that we're going to deliver over and above what anyone ever pays for the service. So we're building our wealth on a very firm foundation, meaning that we're giving higher levels of value than what the person is paying. And when we do that, it's amazing what can happen. Point number 2 is understand the process. Understand the process is verse 2. Desire without knowledge is not good. How much more will hasty feet miss the way? And I've had this when especially when it comes to, money or, influence, anything like that. I've looked at someone, I've been like, man, I want what they have. But then watch this. Desire without knowledge is not good. So for us to desire something without understanding and knowing what the process is to get there, then we get in a challenge and we start to think, oh my gosh, why am I going through all these challenges? Well, this is what you said that you wanted, but you weren't willing to stop and look at the process. And that's where, for myself, that's where I fail a lot. Point number 3 is blaming God for man's inconsistencies. In verse 3, a person's own folly leads to their ruin, yet their heart rages against the Lord. So when we think about this part of it, a lot of times, here we go. Let's read it one more time. A person's own folly leads to their ruin. Where is folly at? It's when you're out of communication with God and you're not working on the wisdom of what God has given you. And so where do we get wisdom? From the fear of God or the respect of God. So when we respect God, he gives us wisdom. When he gives us wisdom, then he brings knowledge, because there's no reason to have knowledge unless you know how to use it, and that's what wisdom is. That knowledge will bring understanding, insight, discernment, discipline, strength, and that strength will lead us right back to the reverence or respect, or in this word, fear of God. So when we look at that, a person's own folly will lead to their ruin, yet their heart rages against the Lord. So a lot of times think of this when it goes to wealth, we want to build wealth in this way, and then we do it, and maybe we're not listening. Maybe we're not listening to a wise way to build it on a firm foundation, and then things blow up, and then we turn around and say, oh man, money's the root of all evil. Well, guys, realize that when we put God first and we seek wisdom, what he'll start to do is he'll give you the wisdom, which is the understanding of knowledge, and he'll give you the knowledge and the understanding to be able to build that wealth, but he'll build it on a firm foundation. Okay, number 4 is your filter. Your filter is an amazing thing that when you're working with this, now I want to look at, it's right here. Oh, your filter is verse 4. So in verse 4, wealth attracts many friends, but the closest friend to the poor person deserts them. Oh, let me read it again. Wealth attracts many friends, but even the closest friend of the poor person deserts them. So when I say filter, when you build on a firm foundation, when you understand the process, right, what it takes to be able to get there, you stop blaming God for man's inconsistencies, and you take responsibility for it, and you build your house on a firm foundation. What'll start to happen is you'll start to attract people around you, but you now have to have a filter, because there's going to be some people that come around you for the advantage that they can get. And I was talking with my friend James Dixon about this. He's starting to have so much influence, one of the most powerful motivational speakers in the world, but now there's some people coming to him just to try and take. You got to have a filter. Make sure on that. Point number 5 is wisdom and understanding. So with wisdom and understanding, when we look at this in verse 6, many curry favor with a ruler, and everyone is the friend of one who gives gifts. Okay? So when we look at that, we have to understand that wisdom, when we look at wisdom is the right use of knowledge, and wisdom comes from the fear of God. Understanding comes from us getting wisdom, getting knowledge, and then understanding what that knowledge is. And so understanding what is happening in this process is massive. And so I go to verse number 8 too. The one who gets wisdom loves life. The one who cherishes understanding will soon prosper. Listen to that again. The one who gets wisdom loves life. The one who cherishes understanding will soon prosper. So that means if I get wisdom, which comes from the fear of God, and the only way that I could fear God is have a relationship with him, not through religion, not through rituals, but have a relationship with him. Once that starts to happen and then I get understanding, things that I build on that will begin to prosper. Number 6, point number 6 is, let's see here, verse number 10. I wrote pearls to the swine. The reason why I say this is because a lot of times we take what's valuable and then we throw it in the mud and we wonder why it doesn't grow, why it's not sustained, why we can't keep it and why it goes away. But you got to be careful of where you take valuable wisdom or you take valuable, cherished things in your life and who you share them with. And this goes in verse 10. It's not fitting for a fool to live in luxury. How much worse for a slave to rule over princes. And so when we look at those kind of things, guys, it's not fitting for a fool to live in luxury. And it's not talking about a foolish person living in a lavish house. It's that the two things are not congruent. Foolishness and the things in that person's life prospering doesn't mean that it won't happen, but it means that most likely it won't be sustainable. At some point, it'll fall because it wasn't built on a firm foundation. Let's see, point number 7. Point number 7 is the importance of family. So watch this. I'm going to go back to it. So if we build on a firm foundation, we understand the process, we stop blaming God, we filter people around us, we add wisdom and understanding, we make sure that we're not throwing our pearls to the swine, then God brings in point number 7, which is the importance of family. Because watch this, guys. I watch so many high-level CEOs, founders, all those things, and I joked with them before, and I said, I actually sell insurance. They said, what is it? And I said, well, it'll give you, it'll sustain 50% of your net worth, 30% of your income in perpetuity, and your mental health. And they were like, oh, I'm in. What's the premium? And I said, stay married. And they all just went silent, and then they all started laughing. They said, I get it. The importance of family. Watch this in verse 13 and 14. A foolish child is a father's ruin, and a quarrelsome wife is like the constant dripping of a leaky roof. Houses and wealth are inherited from parents, but a prudent wife is from the Lord. Guys, the family... If you build your wealth and your family crumbles, you're going to have to go and build twice as much wealth. And we see this all the time. In number 8, it talks about diligence. Diligence, just hard work and right work. This is massive. So it talks about it in verse 15. Laziness brings on deep sleep, and the shiftless go hungry. Think of this, guys, just diligence, right work. Just do the work, and the right things will happen, but you got to do right work. And how do we know what right work is? Stay in communication with God. Point number 9 is principles are active. Principles are active because we constantly have to go back to them, right? And when I look at this, in verse 20, it says, listen to advice and accept discipline, and at the end you will be counted among the wise. It goes back to looking to wisdom, building it on a firm foundation, but principles are active. It's not just set it and forget it. You constantly have to fill it up. Number 10 is generosity. With wealth, generosity is massive. Every person that I see with massive wealth that has grown it, has kept it, and has grown or built it, kept it, and grown it is always generous. Whoever is kind to the poor lends to the Lord, and he will reward them for what they have done. Number 11, discipline. That's in verse 18. In verse 18, discipline your children, for in that there is hope. Do not be a willing party to their death. I didn't like my dad saying this because he just wanted to whoop our butts just because, but I tell you, discipline has really never hurt anybody. When it comes from anger, it does, but when it's discipline, it comes from love. Number 13, keep on building on the foundation, which is verse 20. Again, listen to advice and accept discipline, and at the end you will be counted with the wise. And in verse 27, it says, stop listening to instruction, my son, and you will stray from the words of knowledge. And as we finish up today, it finishes right here with just fear God. And when I look at this part of it, it says in verse 23, it says, fear the Lord leads to life, and the one who rests untouched by trouble. You see, when I was reading it this morning, I realized that it was a blueprint for exactly what DC was talking about. And she talked about that she trained Tony Robbins and Robert Kiyosaki and all these people that we see. And it's amazing because all of those principles, and thank you so much for breaking them down, DC, Tony Robbins, Robert Kiyosaki, thank you so much for breaking them down. And it's amazing to know that they all come from Proverbs 19, because it gives a blueprint on how to build, how to keep, and how to grow wealth. Build it on a firm foundation. Understand the process before you actually look at the result. Stop blaming God for man's inconsistencies, because if you're doing the wrong thing, you're going to get the wrong answer. And then filter the people that come into your sphere, because as you start to have, when you build it, when you understand the process, when you stop blaming God, what will start to happen is it'll start to prosper, but filter out the people that you allow around you. The wisdom and understanding, constantly it's active. You got to work towards it. Be careful of where you put your value and where you allow the valuable things in your life to be able to go. The importance of family, diligence, principles that they have to be active over and over again, the generosity, the discipline, and keep building on that foundation. And finally, watch this, is the fear of God or the respect of God, and it brings it all back. And that is the way that we will grow, or that will grow wealth, that will keep wealth, and will sustain wealth. But it's amazing because it's bookended, right? It says, build it on a firm foundation. How do we find that firm foundation? The fear of God. The fear of God will lead to wisdom. Wisdom will lead to knowledge. Knowledge will lead to insight. Insight, discretion. Discretion, discipline. Discipline, strength. And it goes back to the fear of God. And then it takes you through all those stages, and then it brings it right back to simply fear God. Guys, it's amazing what God will do when we're open to it. And I tell you, corresponding proverb, corresponding day, 3,000-year-old wisdom, the principles will never time out. I've had another incredible time here on Unscripted. I hope you enjoy it. I appreciate you, and I'm officially off the hot seat. Proverbs 19, peace, love, and soul.